I don't really understand where the replication of a culture or a fusion of cultures is unacceptable. Why isn't it okay to base something on American Indian themes and imagery? Of course it is. It's also based on imagery and themes that, to Mark's point, are really global. Furs and wearing all these different leathers and animal skins and feathers, and that's not unique to the United States or to Canada or to the American Indian. I just don't understand why we don't want to look around and be like, no, that's cool. We should actually take as much of that as possible. That style is great. Let's replicate it and totally use it. To me, that's a compliment.
Yeah, I think it's totally stupid. And I think I don't know if this is true. It feels true to me. It at least feels like it's kind of a uniquely privileged American complaint. And I'm not saying that there are definitely misuses of actual cultural appropriation or something that is offensive, but this is not one of them. And I think that there's ways that you can do things respectfully and in ways that, like, I don't know, it doesn't feel disrespectful at all. Like, what about Horizon makes you feel uncomfortable? That just doesn't make any sense to me at all. In fact, I find that, I don't know, I've seen videos, so I guess this is totally anecdotal, but like, if you were to go to Japan and they're celebrating and it's like Golden Week, they would, as an American visitor, they would want you to wear a kimono and like take part in their culture. And I think that that's more often the case. And I guess, I don't know, I guess you could make the argument there's a difference between taking part in a culture and then putting it in your own product or artwork, but I just don't really see that. I'm curious if this is the feeling of one writer or a few, San Francisco writers or something like that, or if natives at large, like North American natives at large, feel that Horizon is offensive for using this. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I don't quite understand it either. I understand the idea of like I don't know, if I was playing a game and it was like let's say it was like based on, I don't know, Puerto Rico or something, and there was like some imagery and some characters, and then the way that they handled it was like very careless. It's like it's like not the right Spanish, it's not the right imagery, it's like they're mixing things up. I could understand being like a little bit annoyed because it's like you use this as an inspiration, but then you don't even care enough to get like to do it justice. It's that I could see that being frustrating. But when you're working off of a place of like pure fiction where you're just kind of fusing elements from around the world, I would argue that like it Horizon's definitely like mostly Native American inspired. I think it's pretty clear. Like there are definitely aspects that are borrowed from elsewhere, but I think if you were to do a chart of like where the inspirations come from for Horizon, I think a large percentage of it would be Native American.
Definitely.
But at the same time, this is pure fiction. It's sci-fi. And I don't think they handle it particularly carelessly because it's not meant to be rooted. It's not really meant to be rooted in that culture in the same way that it would be in something like Assassin's Creed 3, for example. I just I don't know. I just think it's fine to be inspired by things, and it's fine to tell stories about different cultures, and it's fine to be inspired by different cultures, and so much so that you build your own and use elements of those things for your own creative endeavors. As long as you're not careless with it. I think of the thing that comes to mind is Ghost of Tsushima and how that was a entirely, it's a Japanese game in the sense that it's a game about Japan or at a very specific point in time. And it's very, very lovingly crafted, but that's a purely American studio. And Japan loves it, by the way.
Chris, can I interject here? Because I want to read a quote from the mayor of Tsushima.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
It says, "When it comes to the world, the name and location of Tsushima is literally unknown. So I cannot thank them enough for telling our story with such phenomenal graphics and profound stories."
Yeah.
Wow.
They sound offended.
Yeah, I don't know. There are definitely situations where I think it applies. I don't think this is one of them. I don't think most of the situations that are brought up are ones that apply, to be quite frank with you. I just, if you're building a world, I think it's totally reasonable to borrow elements from the world around you. And I really don't think there's anything wrong with that. Especially in a creative medium where you're making your own world and not trying to historically tell. If you're trying to do a historical thing, that's a completely different situation. You're going to want to really do your homework with that stuff, because otherwise it's just like, why are you even doing it in the first place? Like,
Totally.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
But for this, nah, man.
I find this a little hollow. It's just, it is how I feel. It's like, I also find it hollow from a perspective of the American Indian, like as far as a culture is concerned, the aesthetic is what is most known about American Indian culture, like what people relate to it most. The reality is American Indians didn't leave behind any writing. They didn't create, they had it at some point in the past, as we saw in Ancient Apocalypse, some cities and stuff, but nothing really left behind. There's no other sign of them, like in Mexico or in Central and South America, of some other tribes, and obviously the Aztec, the Incas, the Mayas. And I just think of the American Indian, and I'm like, wouldn't you want to be known for, like, what else do you even want to be known for? There's not much else that we can pull from, really. And isn't this the best and most neutral way to pay homage to the memory of this life, this more primitive life? That's the way I kind of look at it too. It's like, in other words, does it just mean that we can't talk about it or do anything with it at all? Because there's no other way to really incorporate it in games, unless you make a game about it, which would be cool. But you know what I mean? So it's like, of course you're going to, just like if you have some like Latin inspiration or Greek inspiration or Roman inspiration, that can be architecture, that could be literature, that could be philosophy, that could be all these different things, And unfortunately, we don't have that same record. So the aesthetic is kind of the way to pay homage to it. And I don't see why you wouldn't want that, since there's not much else that could be integrated that would be more commonly associated with that brand, as it were, of American Indian.
Yeah, it would have to be a little bit more. So like, I actually think it's interesting because it just kind of just reminded me, but I thought the first Prey did a pretty decent.
Yeah.
I mean, like Dustin said, it is a very privileged thing to complain about.
It totally is. And I don't know. And I also think that, frankly, we're saying a major portion of the inspiration for the aesthetic is American Indian. I think there's no doubt about that. I also think the other major portion is just caveman. And especially to do with a lot of the furs and a lot of the animals you're fighting and the combat and the weapons. And it's not just what you would call Native American. And again, I think that that's really a cool full circle send up to the territory itself that the game takes place on, that what's old is new again. And it kind of just went the same way as primitivism rose from the ashes of a civilization. And I don't know, to me, I agree. And I'll just throw out there the idea that I don't understand why you wouldn't want aesthetic replication of your culture, since that is a standard way to represent culture. And it doesn't mean blackface or something like that. You don't want to do that. You don't want people fucking going around, doing the thing over their mouth and with a fucking huge arrow or a feather over their head and all. You don't have to be that literal and fucking racist.
Yeah.
But it's not that. And so I think you have to see the difference. And if you don't see the difference between those two things, then you're dense.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to be careful with what you claim as cultural appropriation. Like, you got to be really careful with that. Because like I said earlier, like there's some examples where I can imagine, like if I was playing a game that was like supposed to be Puerto Rican and then they're using Mexican Spanish, that'd be fucking annoying. Like, I would notice that and I'd be like, that's really dumb, because you cared enough to use this as like a springboard for your profit margin. As like, oh, hey, look, this is a story about this place, but you didn't even care to get to like the minor details right. And this is not a situation where it's fake. It's sci-fi. Get over it.
Indeed.